My wife and her mom and her stepdad, cold-blooded murder this afternoon.
The man in the video is Jesse Huy, a 50-year-old retired veteran. In the late hours of March 20th, 2021, the Greene County Dispatch received a call from Jesse reporting the disturbing events that took place that night. 3 of his family members were murdered in cold blood, and he shared all the details to help the investigators with the case. A few hours earlier, at around 5 p.m., he called the police and gave them details on the scene, urging them to come quickly.
The subject that we spoke to says he shot them. They're saying that he's positive they're dead, and he is not checking on them otherwise. Medical is staging in the area.
When the officers arrived at the scene, they entered his mobile home and immediately found the bodies of Jesse's wife, her mother, and her father around the kitchen table. As they went through the house, they found the weapon used in the crime left out in the open, where the killer placed it after the attack. This crime was carried out in under a minute. No screams were heard, no final words were spoken, and there was no time for any of the victims to process what was happening. In the blink of an eye, their lives were snatched away from them. That night, the most surprising thing was that Jesse was calmly waiting to be arrested. He didn't resist or try to escape, and even when he was arrested, he didn't show any guilt for what he had done. It was a crime that destroyed 2 families and disturbed a quiet neighborhood. How did things end up so disastrously? Could it have been prevented? And why would someone do this to their own family?
Greene County prosecutor has charged 50-year-old Jesse Huy of Strafford, Missouri with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of armed criminal action with no bond.
I shot my wife and her mom and her stepdad,
saying he had just killed 3 of his family members at his home.
This was a barbaric, heinous, unspeakable crime.
I have to tell you, sir, that really I've never handled a case quite of this nature. The word senseless doesn't seem to really capture what happened here.
Jesse and Tonya lived in a 2-story modular home in Greenville, Missouri, with his father who lived upstairs. On December 12, 2021, Tonya had surgery on her back. The surgery left her unable to do most daily activities without help. To assist her, her parents decided to come from Louisiana to Missouri to take care of her.
So then there was, you said 2 more people that were involved. What was the next person's name?
Linda, and I don't know how they spell their last name.
Okay. Do you know what it is, though? And if you don't know, that's fine. What was his name?
Ron.
Ron. Okay.
On Saturday, August 13, 2021, 71-year-old Ronald and 78-year-old Linda Kohler arrived at Huy's home. Jesse and his in-laws never got along, and he had always made it clear to Tonya that he preferred to keep his distance from her parents, and he was okay with them staying out of his life too. When her parents decided to stay without asking or speaking with Jesse, it stirred up old tensions and negative feelings again. Jesse felt like they were forcing themselves on him and didn't like how he managed his home.
Hadn't been like outward friction there, but I stayed away from them. Don't want them in my life. I don't want to be in their life, you know.
Right.
I haven't had no exchanges with them. That's the point. I don't like them. I don't want to be in their life. I don't want them in my life. That's what the whole fucking problem was.
Okay.
They pushed themselves into my life.
Jesse was doing a lot to help Tonya, taking care of her needs, cooking and cleaning the house as needed. Linda was mainly there to give Tonya moral support. Even as things got tense in the house, Jesse tried cooperating for his wife's sake. But by the 4th day, he was starting to lose his patience, and that's when the problems began to get worse. He kept things calm until Tonya started to get better. As she began to feel better, she could walk, get dressed, and use the bathroom alone. She hadn't completely recovered, but she had reached a point where she could do more independently. Sadly, the battle for her health was not the only thing Tanya had to deal with. Jesse kept telling her he was unhappy with the living situation. Now that she had recovered, Jesse saw this as an indication that it was time for her parents to leave.
That's my place, and I'm the one that pays the bill on it.
Right.
So I felt pretty disrespected.
Jesse confronted Tanya several times, consistently getting into heated arguments about her parents' perceived behavior. He felt that they were intrusive and disrespectful in how they behaved in and around his home. At one point during an argument, he intentionally left the front door open so that Tanya's mother could hear the disagreement from the kitchen.
And I left the front door open. Her mother was in the kitchen right there, and I left the front door open so she could hear every goddamn word. Basically, she was just going to do what she wanted to do, and the way I felt just didn't matter.
Jesse felt that the situation was made worse by the fact that he believed his in-laws had previously treated him unfairly. According to him, when he married Tanya and they moved in together, Ron and Linda would come over without warning and stay with them. He described their behavior as having no social grace.
It sounds like they would just show up and invite themselves.
Well, see, when Tanya and I got together years ago, her mom and Ron pulled the before.
If he's in any position to be discussing social graces when he just murdered them.
Which I don't agree with. I don't think you do that. I wouldn't do that to my own family.
Sure.
He continued to voice his objections repeatedly throughout their entire 5-day stay at the house. When all failed trying to get Tanya on his side, Jesse made a vague threat that he would later recall when speaking to the interrogator.
I warned him. I fucking told him. I guess she decided to call my bluff.
Saturday, March 20th. In the morning, Jesse went out with some friends for lunch to get a break from the house. After eating, drinking, and laughing with his friends, he returned home. He felt tense as he approached the house, expecting another argument with his spouse and her parents. To his surprise, the house was completely empty when he stepped inside. He said it seemed like Linda had taken all her stuff, indicating she was gone for good. He was relieved that she had finally understood, but he needed to be certain before he could fully relax. After searching the house, he found no obvious signs of them. He then went upstairs to talk with his father about the situation. His feeling of calm didn't last. During their conversation, he became angry again as Tanya, Linda, and Ron walked back into the house. Seeing them enter his home made Jesse feel increasingly unstable and reach his limit. Jesse was so fed up that he stormed downstairs. As his anger bubbled, he walked up to the parents and bluntly said, "Ron and Linda, you gotta leave now." They appeared slightly surprised and turned to Tanya, who reportedly said, "They're not going anywhere. I'm a half owner of this place. They can stay as long as they want to." With that, the conversation was over, and her parents would not leave until they were ready. That's when Jesse seemed to lose control and acted on his vague threat. He went to his pickup truck, grabbed his 9mm handgun, and returned to the house with a determined mind that he was going to kill them as they sat with their guards down in a space they assumed they would be safe in.
The defendant went in and shot 3 unarmed people.
Jesse told the interrogator that they did see him coming. The first person to see him was Ron, who was sitting in Jesse's chair. Ron noticed him approaching and turned to look at Tanya. By the time Ron looked back at Jesse, the first bullet hit him in the head.
And he started turning his head to me, and by then I got him.
Jesse turned the gun on Linda before she had time to process what happened in front of her. He shot her in the head.
And Linda was all fucking surprised that I just shot Ron and I shot her in the fucking head.
Jesse saved his wife for last. She couldn't believe what had just happened, her eyes wide in shock. In her final moments, the last thing she saw was her husband killing her parents and then aiming the gun at her.
To make sure she saw what you were doing to her parents and then shoot her in the eyes, that's full of all kinds of psychology that is way over my training, but it's horrific. All of this is horrific.
Jesse squeezed the trigger without hesitation, and in under a minute, it was all over. At around 5 p.m. in the afternoon, he killed 3 of his family members. But it didn't end there. Jesse saw Ron twitch for a second and immediately walked over to him to shoot his head once again to ensure his death. Moments later, he heard a slight gurgling from Linda, on which he walked over to her and shot her again in the head as well.
So I went outside, I got my gun, I walked back in, I shot them all in the head. Then I shot them all in the head again to make sure they were down.
Without any sign of life from Tanya, he still proceeded to shoot her twice more in the head. His anger seemed to be directed at her the most, as indicated by how the crime occurred. During the investigation, questioning, and trial, Jesse did not seem to feel sorry or embarrassed. Instead, he appeared proud and angry, speaking passionately about it without showing any guilt.
Clearly, there's a sense of pride in his voice. There's a sense of empowerment. He's not broken down about it. He's not emotional about it. The truth may be that there are likely more emotional issues going on here that he may not be even aware of.
Jesse kept saying that he didn't want to do it. He felt like he had no choice and was really unhappy about the whole situation. He told his wife that he was being forced to do things he didn't want to do. He even openly blamed his deceased wife for it.
And I said, you know, you're going to make me go off. Mm-hmm. And if you do, this is on you.
Yeah.
And this is what she got for it. She made me go off, and now there's 3 fucking dead people.
Once he was done, he sat down and called the police. He even took the time to unload his weapon and let the police know he didn't intend to resist.
4486 North Farmer 249. The caller's saying that he's killed his family. He says that he's left the gun unloaded and the clip will be on the tailgate of a vehicle.
According to Jesse, none of them even got a chance to make a sound except for a squeal because of how quickly he executed them.
Did any of them get anything out verbally?
No, nothing more than a little bit of a squeal. Like I said, it was all over real quick.
So they didn't have time to even say anything.
I shot them all 3 in the head, and then I shot him in the head again because I thought I seen him twitch, and I heard her gurgle, I heard Linda gurgle a little bit, so I went and put another one into her, and then I come back around to where Tanya was sitting, and I shot her again in the head to make sure she was done.
He also framed it as he was pushed to do these actions. When asked about how he felt, he said,
I'm upset, you know.
Sure.
Like I said, I didn't start off wanting to do this. I never wanted to do this. I feel like they pushed me to the point that I had to do it. So
another thing he seemed to repeat often was that he warned her about the supposed consequences. However, it's hard to imagine that she had any idea how far such a seemingly simple disagreement would escalate. When asked if he knew what he meant by the consequences, she said,
Did you know what you were meaning at the time?
No, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew it wasn't going to be fucking good. I did tell Tanya earlier in the week that I was really unhappy with the way this was going and I wasn't going to put up with it. And if she persisted that, you know, it was going to be on her, the consequences would be on her.
During the court proceedings, the family pleads of what the sentence for this should be.
I will miss Linda and Ron's willingness to always be there for all of us. That's what they were doing with Tanya when this arrogant monster made the selfish decision to take their lives.
He said he knew that what he did was wrong, but the fact of the matter is, he couldn't stop himself from doing it. Because, quote, it happened so fast. He claimed that he has had PTSD since the war and has never been dangerous for a long time.
I've been dangerous for a long time and I've been able to maintain and not get into trouble.
He told the interrogator that they should keep an eye on their officer, Beatles, because he's a dangerous person and that he used excessive force on it.
I realize I just killed 3 people, but I also fucking called you guys and turned myself in without fighting.
Okay.
So there was no need for that shit that he pulled.
He told the cops that it would be a bad move to put him with anyone else in a prison cell, because now that he has killed 3 people, there is nothing to stop him.
I just killed 3 people, so another one ain't gonna fucking make a difference to me now.
Okay.
Jesse pleaded guilty to the murders of Tanya Huy and her parents, as well as 3 counts of armed criminal action.
Jesse Huy, after pleading guilty to the murders of Tanya Huy and Ron and Linda Kohler, is now sentenced to life in prison.
He has received 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. His attorney stated that he does not plan to appeal his convictions and claims he never wanted to fight the case in the first place.
Huy told the courtroom he would have pled over a year ago and didn't want the jury involved at all. He said public defenders filed continuances to extend the process.
Now, I've killed them and ruined the lives of, their family, and I've ruined my life. I don't need a lawyer. I know what I did, and I know what I did was wrong. I know I ain't going anywhere or doing anything ever again.
What are your thoughts on this case and Jesse's actions? Thank you for watching, and for more true crime documentaries and investigations, please like and subscribe.